Hello YouTube! Today we're doing some more account reviews, and this is an account that I have been meaning to take a look at for a while because it was supposed to be in last month's account reviews, but then it got cut off because of some incidences that happened on stream. So say hello to Waifu. Her account is pretty good. It's VIP 7, and we've got a few focuses that you may see as good, and a few things you might see as questionable. And Waifu needs help with building wide, which is a common mistake, so we'll discuss some of that for you guys as well so you can better understand it. And we're going to be discussing potential issues like going all in on events when you shouldn't, twitchy fingers, the classics really. So folks, let's take a look at Waifu's account. We have VIP 7, level 183, so not super duper old. I'm expecting this to be under a year of playing, which is pretty standard for most people that join our community and start to ask questions, because if you've been playing for quite some time and you've stuck out with Idle Heroes, you probably know a thing or two. But no doubt anyone has their questions, right? Everybody has something that they're not too confident with. So let's take a look at this and what we're dealing with. We begin with a Tree of Origin 3 on a Vesa and a Tree of Origin 2 on a Jara. So that's spending or investment into events seems to have gone into getting yourself some sublimation materials, spiritual essence, stuff like that. So let's go take a look at your trees, which is not a normal thing I check at, but this is something cool that we can look at. Okay, Healing Oracle has been upgraded to Sublime. Now, I'm not necessarily a fan of this because I don't really use my Vesa for her basic attack, but this is a much earlier account where actually having decent shields and decent protection is actually pretty good. So I'm not going to complain about that. The all damage dealt reduction is good, the healing's okay, the shields are fine. So it's not an amazing ability, but putting one drop into it is perfectly fine. And the rest of the things, I mean, if you want to improve those shields, if you're not just energy feeding endlessly, this is pretty standard stuff. And you said you're 7 months old? Awesome. And ooh, this is nice. We've got Life in Bloom, we've got Pure Sublimation here, all taken up, Deep Sublimation, and this last one, I really like this. So this was a key instrument in how I was able to improve my Star Expedition team. Healing allies gives them extra armor, so this is really, really nice. Keeps them protected, keeps them alive, and obviously because I build my team around having multiple active skills from Vesa very quickly, because I have all the energy feed, it allowed me to have some protection. So in your case, I don't know if you have energy artifacts quite yet, so you can do that, but you're definitely getting to a really good spot. So I like your tree choices. I understand Healing Oracle because you're going to be doing basic attacks with the Vesa, so that makes sense. Overall, it's going to improve your team. Nice job. Okay, we begin with an active skill. We have Melodic Strings. That gets shields up straight away, of course. We've got crit attack. And yeah, it's built fairly aggressively. This makes a ton of sense, and this is all tuned up. So this is a very Vesa heavy account. Now, normally when you only have 2 Transcendence heroes, my gut reaction would be to focus on Eloise as a hero, but I have seen accounts do very well with simply Void 3 on the Eloise, because it means you can attack back and hurt opponents. And that's exactly what you've done here. You've gone Void 3, we've got that attack back. So if some of you are getting a bit tired of having Eloise as a homeowner and want to lean more into your Vesa, that's totally okay. There are some game modes you're not going to be as good at because just the nature of the way the game works, right? Improving Eloise is annoyingly effective. It's fine. But actually, there will be a crossover period where making Vesa so strong that she's rocking 2 million damage. You know, that's a very good attack stat that actually you're going to do fine either way. Also, this means you get way more Star Expedition damage, and you're going to do better in broken spaces. So I'm liking this Waifu so far. This is looking pretty clean. So for 7 months of progress, bit of spending in there, we got a very strong hero. The Jara. I love her. She's Tree of Origin 2. This is what I love to see from Jaras, because Tree of Origin 2 gets you an improved active skill. I had my Jara at Tree of Origin 2 for quite some time. You've got the core on her as well, which adds more CC to your account. Perfect. Very nice decision. And we're going up the sublimation tree here as well to give ourselves some more control precision and improve the overall crowd control effect of this active skill. Not to mention, by simply improving it, the damage is incredible. So yeah, this is really, really good. Now there's a question. Is this a Crystals of Transcendence person? Yes or no? Now, I don't think it is. We have 2 Transcendence heroes, and you might go, ooh, But we also have a ton of Stellar Shards because you have all the Stellar Shards needed for Tree of Origin upgrades, Void 4 in both Vesa and Jara, we have Void 3 in the Eloise, and Void 1s trickling down into Siahu, Flora, and Rogan, who are tenants for Vesa. So that's perfectly fine. Now, personally, I wouldn't build a Siahu because I would just get Mystic Fairy Freya, but Mystic Fairy Freya is not available because we only have 2 Transcendence Heroes. So actually, you know what? Building a Siahu here totally makes sense. It's fine. A lot of your decisions are making absolute sense. Do we have attack? Yes, we do. So you've gone ahead and got the right stone on them for tenants. I'm just loving what I'm seeing. Now, I find it funny that you have a fortress flag. I'm not going to ask the questions behind why that exists. It was probably for a different hero at a different time, but that's perfectly good. So as OP Waifu said, I'm a spender though, don't forget that. So you're going in guidance. Are you buying cores? Is that what's happening? Is that what we're doing? Are we buying cores whenever they're available? Because you're VIP 7, right? You're going to be spending money. I would buy cores. Not all the time, but whenever they're nice and cheap in events, you know, from a payment relay, that would be something I would consider. Maybe that's something you've gone ahead and done. I'm going to look at your Transcendence packages. Yeah, these are all 10, 10, 10, so you're not buying them immediately. I mean, I'm also a bit annoyed the price went up in Britain, but that's a whole different thing about the British economy being a bit poo-poo right now. But, you know, let's just not dwell on that because it just makes me sad to think about. Big cry. Anyway, enough about my economy. Let's talk about Waifu's account. So, on the topic of resources, economy, and all good things, let's take a look at what we've gotten at. Okay, yes. We have 275 Heroic Summon Scrolls. If I remember from last time that you signed up for account reviews, we discussed partly the overuse of scrolls in events and not necessarily getting the best rewards from them. I think, OP, what you've got with your account is probably a situation for yourself where you're like, right, I want to go ahead and enjoy this game. I don't like the idea of saving resources. Is this your issue with being a twitchy-fingered player? Is it that you just want to just go in on events and enjoy them? Or do you have the opposite problem, which is that sometimes you can smell the progress is right in front of you and you would rather act now in hopes that you will get there and start doing silly things to get that progress and don't have the patience to wait it out because you'd rather have short-term reward rather than long-term reward. So these are the two main reasons we see people be twitchy-fingered players, because it's all well and good to roast people on stream and shout at them a lot. We generally instead should probably offer the advice that really it's going to be a psychological thing. It depends how your brain works as you approach an event. So Waifu said, well, I see good value loot, so it's hard for me to keep it for later. Maybe better value. Okay, that makes sense. You'll see something, oh, well, I want that now. Let me go and try and get it. And then you'll end up using all your scrolls rather than thinking, holiday season's coming. Let's save things up. Because if you don't know, guys, this is the beginning of October. So we've got Halloween, Black Friday, we've got Christmas, we've got Chinese New Year. And to have 275 Heroic Summon Scrolls on an account means you either had one stonking Heroic Summons event earlier, which granted we have had when Transcendence Heroes have been released, or you got a little impatient and kept on drip feeding them. So, Waifu, if you want some advice to take this account and move it forwards, I would say just saving resources for big events, and so you can go ahead and cash them in when an artifact is available. It's just a really good thing to be able to do. Now, that said, wishing coins, you've absolutely smashed it. You've got 1,000 wishing coins, so this is brilliant. So don't go kicking yourself too much that you're a twitchy-fingered player. You've got a ton of wishing coins. This is great. Also, spiritual essence, you got tons of that. In fact, you just want more stellar shards to improve your levels. So here's a thought, right? One thing you can do, if you can find a way to get a few more stellar shards, you could even look at getting the Tree of Origin level on this Vesa even higher. But is that worth it? Good question. Well, it depends whether you want to save that spiritual essence for a future Transcendence hero. Granted, we are 3 million away from a future Transcendence hero. So it is more of a question of, do you want to shove it all into someone now, or do you want to wait? Now, another thing about spiritual essence, if you shove it into Jara, like I'm doing on the VIP series, this passive here, the Void Infusion, gives you more focus. And I like focus, right? Because focus improves the chance that you have better control immunity offset and control precision. And you also get energy from this passive as well. So by improving all of this, you just basically make Jara a better CC'er. And if you don't know, Jara's CC is what makes her good. So that's going to help you out. The only issue I find with this account is not your fault. It's actually that this account is so early that all these investments into the Tree of Origin, you've only been playing for about 7 months. So even though we can make a really, really powerful Jara, we can make a really powerful Vesa, a lot of game modes are still going to be difficult because you don't have 3 Transcendence heroes. And that's one worry I have about the Jara being on this account. It's not that she's a bad hero, it's that this early build, I feel like there are some combinations of heroes we're just missing. Is it bad? No. Not at all. It's perfectly fine to build a Jara if you're a spender and you can invest in it and improve her and make her work, which is exactly what you've done. So we got the melodic strings on the Vesa, we got a receptor on the Jara. Now, what I also want to see is some energy feed, because if you want to build a Jara, you're going to need to feed energy into her to improve the power of her active skill, because if you didn't know, the more energy Jara has in the tank, the more reliable the CC effect of your active skill is. So let's see if we've got some energy artifacts. Okay. We don't here, but we've got an attack HP, Splendid Golden Crown on an Eloise. This is a bueno. Really nice, really clean. This is how you should all be building your Eloises at home. Obviously, you don't need to make the crown splendid. You can do just fine with a bog standard, boring, regular crown, or if you get another one from a bond chest, do go ahead and make it glittery. But you do not need to rush a Splendid Golden Crown. We have a Splendid Demon Belt. This is nice. We have a flag, which we've looked at. We have a Radiant Demon Belt, and does that mean we have another one? Player Courageous. And, oh! Waifu. Smashed it. Absolutely smashed it. Demon Belt Splendid. So, you know what, Waifu? For someone that's worried about their twitchy fingeredness, you have gone ahead and built some pretty nice heroes. Golden Crown here just sitting around. Nice thing to just throw in Sherlock. Seems good. We got a Snow Heart. Now, I assume that came from a bond chest. If it was a random pickup, that's also totally cool. I randomly picked up a Snow Heart at one point. It's a good artifact. Gives control immunity, energy. Improved, of course, it's better because it slows down opponents, which is its main use in late game. But you're not in late game, so you don't need to worry so much about that. One thing I will mention about this wide building is it is not exactly subtle that we have a bunch of 9-star heroes here that are questionable. Now, 9-star is by no means the end of the world, especially for an account this developed, but it is a little bit of a problem. Now, let's talk about the ones that aren't immediate issues. So we have Asmodel at 9-star. This is fine, because it is very, very common practice to feed all of your light heroes and dark heroes into heroes that you want to build to 9-star, like we've done with the Mockman and the Aspen, like this, just because it compresses and basically reduces the amount of space they're taking up in your bag. This isn't building wide. This is just merely tidying up the bag. Some people would define this as building wide, but those people, I would argue, are missing the point. The building wide is only a term we use to describe bad things. This is simply tidying up. So yeah, this is fine. This just compresses things, and it can be undone with a soul symbol. That's the thing I want to stress, right? If this wasn't locked, I could convert it, break away all the food. So we haven't built wide. We've merely made a little box for the food, which we can access at any time. Building wide, on the other hand, is kind of what we've done with, I want to say like the Olivia. That's kind of a bad example though, because a 9-star Olivia is a good support hero. It's more what you've done with Seahu and Sherlock, because you've E4 to Sherlock but not finished him to E5, and instead E1 to Seahu, but you haven't got the 9 stars and 10 stars to finish him. So what you could do is regress the Seahu, use that to build a 10-star fodder hero with the 9-star dummies you get, and then bonk, feed that into Sherlock and make him E5. The only wonder I have is what benefit does an E5 Sherlock bring to this account? Not sure. He's not a tenant for anybody. He might be good in PvP. Maybe he's a hero for PvP. In fact, that's probably the only use I can see. You do like PvP. There you go, waifu. You've said it way before I even got there. In that case, then yeah, I would absolutely E5 the Sherlock. The one interesting thing with a Sherlock is if you can give him Unbending Will, it arguably is going to make his ability to health swap more reliable, because it can keep him in at lower health. Unbending Will can pop so he doesn't die, then he health swaps. Yeah, it's pretty useful. So getting him to E5 if you do care about PvP is pretty important. You could put together a pretty decent PvP team here. We've got Vesa, we got Jara, we got Sherlock. And then you can probably chuck in Amon-Ra to counter people that are using Sword Flash, because you're at that point in the game where that's pretty common. You can still rock in Eloise. She's going to be a more powerful hero for you. She's got a B tier Awaken, which is pretty good. And yeah, shame the attack stat's a little low, but that health stat is chunky. It would be a waste not to run her. So yeah, I think putting the Eloise on the team is good. And then Rogan, maybe to buff you up, speed you up, that's good. And at that point, yeah, there we go. We've just said 6 heroes, right? It's your 3 at the front, and then a Rogan, an Amon-Ra, and a Sherlock. That should do pretty well. So I like it. I think it's a pretty good team. You've got some interesting heroes. I assume the Seer who is going to come in here to help you in Seal Land. You need some defensive artifacts for that, but double Seer who, you got a Flora, which is just mainly a tenant really, so that's fine. Obviously, you could see this as a hero you could use in Forest Seal Land, but she's not going to offer any benefits. The big thing here really is Olivia. I would want to see this built to E5. I would strongly consider it waifu. And you pulled every single one of those bees except for Fairy Queen Vessa? Oh, really? You just went ahead and grabbed it? That's nice. And oh, okay, you've just said you want to go ahead and make Aspen because you've just told me that you went ahead and bought this Aspen. I assume, because you said you didn't pull it. So I assume you grabbed this Aspen in a nice little cheap deal from the auction house, which means, wow, 250 starry gems. That's an absolute steal for a B-. I mean, he's not an incredible B-. His attack stat's terrible, but you know what? Still grab it, take it. That's very cheap. If you've got the starry gems, you might as well. So yeah, you can go ahead and make a B- Aspen. Would be a pretty good hero, can't complain. So throwing him in, I mean, another Transcendence hero, what does that mean? So let's discuss this. Hypothetically, if we had 5 million Crystals of Transcendence, why would Aspen be a good decision? Well, if you don't know, folks, Aspen plus Jara, they're the main two heroes that can CC that happen to be in the Transcendence faction. Horrify comes from Aspen. You have Freeze and Petrify from the Jara. Together, they are quite oppressive to opponents. Combine that with Vessa to keep them alive and do some pretty decent damage, you can find yourself with a really good trio of heroes. It's a very nice combination. So with these three, with some fine-tuning and good building, you can go into the Void campaign and actually make some pretty good progress, right? Because Void campaign is horribly difficult when you have very few heroes that are transcendent. By adding in Aspen, we got ourselves a good trio. The other thing I would strongly encourage you to consider, though, is if you do choose to build Aspen, to maybe at some point consider changing your strategy a little bit to incorporate a Sword Flash. Now, with that Sword Flash, alongside the Aspen, who is a tenant, and maybe keeping the Vessa, you can go into the Void Vortex and push through and clear Vanquisher. Because you're at Vanquisher Area 6, but you haven't beaten it and got to Dominator Area 6. So the final thing I want to share with you before we start asking you some questions, bouncing back and taking a deeper look at things, is simply by bringing a Sword Flash into this account at some point in the future, you can potentially give yourself some clears. And I know you have the Jara Core. That is very true. The Jara Core is nice. So if you find that there is a way to clear this without ever having to build the Sword Flash, that's brilliant, because you can get the CC from the Jara, you can go ahead and lock them down with Aspen and just let your other heroes work together to clean up. However, right, by going ahead and running a Sword Flash, you give yourself a more reliable damage dealer to clear these things. It doesn't mean, I don't want you to misunderstand, it does not mean that we're choosing Sword Flash as a permanent addition to the account. No, we're building her and her tenants just to get Vanquisher cleared, and then maybe do what you want to do in Fortress Seal Land with her, let yourself have maybe a month mucking around, and then take that Sword Flash, get rid of her, rebuild your Jara, and then draw your attention elsewhere. It's just something you need to consider. At some point, picking up a Sword Flash will help you in Vanquisher. If there's a way to do it without her, brilliant. But if there isn't, it's definitely something you want to consider. That's assuming you even value Vanquisher as a game mode, but I know a lot of people do, because the rewards do give Celestial Island materials, and that's pretty helpful when it comes to making more powerful heroes and overall improving your account. So yeah, very nice. Let's go draw our attention to the bag, and I just want to check your chests now. Do we have any artifact chests? No, things are fairly cleaned up. You've gone ahead and pulled most of your chests. I don't know whether this was for awakenings or just to build heroes. Either way, it kind of makes sense. Let's look at shards. Do we have multiple Olivia copies, or is she pretty barren? Yeah, no, I'm not seeing many Olivias. No, even in the bag? Not really. You got some Freyas, though, to consider a Mystic Fairy Freya. Very nice hero. I like a lot. Do we have a Sherlock? Oh, we do have a Sherlock. So you could actually strongly consider E5ing that Sherlock for PvP if that was something you wanted. That's a thought. And you can do it with Fairy Queen Vessa, Lord of Fear Aspen, Starwing Jara, and Eos. If you don't want Sword Flash. So that's a consideration for a fourth Transcendence hero. A long way off, but definitely a thought. Good to know, Raven. Good to know. It's a very helpful bit of advice there. If you don't want to build Sword Flash and bend over and do it prematurely, instead you can go ahead and say, you know what? No. I'll wait until I have 4 Transcendence heroes. It's a bit of a stretch. 4 Transcendence Heroes is pretty deep. But overall, waifu, if that's something you want to do, then you don't have to worry too much about Vanquisher. You will miss out on resource gain, though. I do want to make that strongly clear. The value for money from resources is pretty important to me as a player anyway. I want to complete things pretty quickly so that I can get as much from them later down the line. That's why we encourage you to get a Seal Land to 20 pretty fast and to clear Vanquisher moderately quickly, or other vortex modes as well, because the more rewards you can accumulate over time, the stronger your account gets. Because at the end of the day, time is a resource that is not able to be bought in Idle Heroes. You can accelerate your progress by buying things, but ultimately there are some things that are locked into time. You know what that makes me think about, waifu? That makes me think about your star spawns. Let's go take a look at those real quick. We have... Oh, interesting. All right, this is not actually that bad. There's a few questionable things here. Let's talk about them. So we have 115 on the Transcendent Star Spawn. I would have gone for the Holy Damage one. I will straight up say this would have been a better improvement, in my personal opinion, than to go for the Spirit of Wisdom. That said, Spirit of Wisdom gives your Jara more control precision, and that could potentially improve your win rate. But Holy Damage improves your ceiling. It improves the overall damage of your team. And therefore, if you physically can't do enough damage and CC doesn't matter, then Splendor would become important. But the weird thing about the game, since, we gained our basic principles and practices, is we have been given things the power creep, right? We have the Tree of Origin. We have huge bonuses that tenants get. Of course, that then is stockpiled by flags, improving the Tree of Origin levels of your tenants. So Jara is no doubt a chunky monkey with a ton of stats that she can go ahead and give to Vesa. So there's a lot of improvements that have been made to the game's power level that maybe you might find that consistency is more important than overall damage. So, yeah, and you're saying Holy Damage is overrated? Fabian, it's not. It scales with attack. So the two of them go hand in hand. It's very, very good. Holy Damage is pretty fantastic. So I wouldn't go ahead and discredit Holy Damage, my friend. It's very, very good. And you said, by the way, the Fairy Queen Vesa attack is pretty low because you forgot to change the Starwing Jara Stone. No, I noticed that too. So a little thing to discuss. I didn't want to call it out, but if you've brought attention to it, that's fine. It is good to have an attack stone on a Starwing Jara, and heck, if you can get a Transcendence flag, that would be nutty. Now, I know your priority is probably towards artifacts at the moment, but consider it a Transcendence flag. If flag boxes do come up, which they will do during the holiday season, I can assure you the holiday season is giving flags, I would go ahead and maybe pick them up, assuming there aren't better choices. Because I know they do a lot of this multiple choice kind of reward thing, but there will probably be something that just gives you something. And attack is hands down the best stone. Yeah, Sol, absolutely, yeah, because it just improves the damage that your hero can do. And then that damage normally is going to affect other abilities as well, like shields, like healing. And on a hero like Vesa, that's all good stuff. And improving your Star Expedition damage, your boss fight damage in broken spaces, and just improving the overall performance of the Vesa is never a bad thing. So, yeah, waifu, I feel like you've made some good progress here. I think your account has improved, and I think you've definitely not actually done as many mistakes as I think you give yourself credit for. It's good. I think there's a few things you've done here which are questionable. The Sherlock, the Seerhu. But you know what? That's fine. Some of us make mistakes. Now let's look at your Seal Lands. Let's have a look. We got, okay, Dark is incomplete. That's interesting. Who do we have that could do Dark Seal Land? Well, you've got an E5 Amun-Ra, and you've got a Drake. These two together, surely, and the 9-star Aspen. I feel like you should be able to do this. If at some point you notice that you have a few Stellar Shards lying around, before you go and ham-fist them inside a hero that's going to be Tree of Origin, because at that point you can't get them back, go ahead and try consider putting them into a Dark hero, and Drake plus Amun-Ra plus the 9-star Aspen should be able to absolutely bonk Seal Land. And then a little advice as well, if you want to go in, use baby heroes. Baby heroes are not to be underrated. Like a little baby Amun-Ra here, level 100, even her active skill gives you bubbles, and bubbles just mitigate damage. So I think it's very important. You can go ahead and run some baby Amun-Ras. Of course, big Amun-Ra here is going to put out a ton of bubbles as well, especially when she's void improved. Oh, those bubbles are going to be nice. So I would think about that. Absolutely consider it. And yeah, leftover stuff can go for baby carries, because then you can steal energy from opponents with them. And all in all, your win rate should be pretty nice. Seal Land 20 should be no problem at all. Let's look at your other Seal Lands. We've got Shadow here. At some point, you will want to improve Jara, make her a homeowner, and she can push through this, but there's no rush for that. Now, your main focus is definitely Forest Seal Lands, so that's why I'm not too worried about the ones that are pushing above 20, because if you see here, the only one you haven't done is Dark. So yeah, I think Forest Seal Land is your main focus, and as I said earlier in this account review, building an E5 Olivia is going to do nothing but benefit that. And honestly, if you decide at some point to build a Mystic Fairy Freya, she is my favorite hero in the game, and I think she's going to go ahead and just give you so much support that that's going to improve your Forest Seal Land performance as well. I do say, by the way, my favorite hero that is Transcendent. I want to make that clear. Freya is not my absolute favorite hero. That will always be Ithaca. She is pretty darn cool. And for male heroes, it's 100% Faithblade. So yeah, I mean, where is he? Where is he? There he is. Beautiful. So yeah, Mystic Fairy Freya is my favorite Transcendence. But that's not me saying that you should build her early, by the way, folks. It's just that I like her and I think she's cool. It doesn't mean I think she's necessarily good. Disclaimer. Anyway, she is great, but not for too many early accounts. Always go with Vesa. She's fantastic and hits like a truck. So, you know what? Waifu, life is fun. And what about the Realms Gate? You know what? I don't think you should struggle too much in the Realms Gate. I think you should be pushing a pretty high Void Corruption with this team. So where are we up to? 1-1-1. You know what? 2 million attack on a Vesa. That's not the worst. Now, 1-1-1. Maybe you could push it higher if you started running things that are going to go ahead and CC lock heroes that are problematic. So obviously Jara is going to be a big player here. Energy feeding into her as much as possible is good. Now, I have had a lot of success with teams with 4 Splendid Demon Bells, just constantly energy feeding that Jara and running other heroes who benefit from active skills. That's heroes like Amun-Ra that can put up bubbles to keep you alive. You could even consider other CC heroes as well, like HomeownerJUMP. He's still very, very good, even though Jara will probably pip the limelight. And also, don't be afraid, upgrading that Receptor to Splendid is going to help as well in the Realms Gate. And no doubt, Fairy Queen Vesa, her healing, her shields, they're going to help you succeed in the Realms Gate too. So they're heroes I would strongly consider. Also, Ignis, don't discredit her. The control immunity that she grants, if you were going to still heavily rely on an Eloise to be a reactive hero, is still really good. You can't go wrong with the old Eloise reaction attack. It's good. And if you combine that with the CC from Jara, though, you might find it's a bit redundant, so that depends on your testing and your experience. E5 Ignis, yeah, Fabian makes a good point. If you want even more energy feed, stick an E5 Ignis next to the Jara, then you just, every time Ignis gets an active skill, she's just going to throw 100 energy into Jara, which is then obviously going to supercharge her active skill and make her way more reliable with her CC. So don't be afraid to consider an E5 Ignis as a build option as well. So heroes to work around. Hopefully that's a few that I've listed that you can think about. And yeah, let your creativeness get the better of you, right? Rogans are going to improve your damage. Drake will debuff lower HP enemies. It depends what you're struggling with. And eventually, I think you could genuinely find the team does quite well. When you finally do get a Mystic Fairy Freya, if that was something you wanted, or even a Lord of Fear Aspen, because his lockdown is pretty good too, you'll find that they will also improve your performance in the Realms Gate. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense for the Realms Gate team, that you've got a lot of options available to you, and obviously, as I said, Lord of Fear Aspen and Mystic Fairy Freya will only improve your success if you choose to build one or both of them at some point for the account. Then again, I don't think you're going to rush for Mystic Fairy Freya. I know she will help your Forest Seal Land, but considering you've already discussed wanting to build Aspen by the fact you've just, you've got him up, I think it's going to be a great option. And I think Eos, if you wanted to do Vanquisher. Then again, once you've done that, I would totally switch the Eos for a Mystic Fairy Freya at that point, because it's just Mystic Fairy Freya. She's super strong alongside Vesa. And you said, I thought about building an AMB after getting your Receptor finished. Good plan. Oh, if you don't already have one, absolutely. AMB is a brilliant artifact. I'm currently using AMB on my account to push through Purgatory. It's really good on Fairy Queen Vesa. It's going to help you in Seal Land as well, if that's something you're struggling with. You can bounce between Melodic Strings and AMB for Fairy Queen Vesa, depending on how you build her. But yeah, no, I really do enjoy Augustus Magic Ball. So yeah, absolutely a great consideration. It's an artifact that's going to be really versatile as well. Lots of heroes will appreciate it, not just Fairy Queen Vessa. And it's only going to be helpful for your account in the long run. So yeah, very nice. Don't be afraid for more Demon Bells as well. Consider a secondary scepter maybe for your Lord of Fear Aspen. And more crowns maybe to help you in the Seal Lands. Either way, life is good. The account is looking pretty tasty. And overall, I got not much to complain about. So thank you for letting us take a look at this waifu. I didn't want this to be a roast or a hard time, just a different perspective on how to play a mid-game account rather than just going Vessa and then Freya. Actually building Jara as a second hero is pretty interesting, and it's nice to see that you're doing pretty well. So waifu, yeah, it was a good time. Thank you for this, and hopefully see you guys in future videos. If you want to get your account reviewed, you can join us on Tuesdays. Not all accounts we log in on, but we do go ahead and try to discuss and talk with you here on stream regardless. iOS, Android, doesn't really matter, but if you do want to get logged in on, there are specific ways to do that, and being Android is a pretty compulsory aspect of that. Either way, folks, I would love to see you in future stuff. Don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy idling!